Welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to teach you a really simple process to removing your patterns that are not serving you. In particular, we're going to look at a procrastination pattern, and I've mapped it all out. But I recommend that after watching this video, you go over it yourself for your individual issue. And there's a few reasons we want to map out our patterns that aren't serving us, our limiting beliefs, our issues. The first one is that mapping out this pattern gives you more awareness on it, which helps you break it. To break a pattern, you have to see the real reason for the pattern and what you may be hiding from. So this is a process of radical honesty. Mapping out this pattern can be groundbreaking for some people. And I do not understate that, because you begin to see that this was not you. This was just a pattern that was operating like a program that had been planted in your mind. This helps you relax and release that identification you have with this problem, like thinking you are a perfectionist or you have a procrastination problem. This actually really helps you release it. You were not that way. It just happened that you were operating that way at that time. So let's dive straight into it. And we start this off by writing down the pattern that we have, the pattern that we've noticed, which is, okay, I've noticed that I set high standards for myself. Okay, that's the first thing. What does this result in? It means that if I can't meet these high standards, I procrastinate or avoid the task. Well, why? So this is a whole series of asking you why, asking what leads on to the next point. Why? Well, I criticize myself when I create or do something that I perceive has some flaws or doesn't meet my high standard. Because I criticize myself, I feel negative emotions when working on this task. The negative emotions take away from the feeling of joy, spontaneity, and creativity. The positive emotions can only arise. These positive emotions can only arise in a state of positivity. And the negative emotions cover up everything that is good about the task. And what does it also result in? Criticizing myself's not good. What does it result in? What's the issue here? What is it really taking away from my life? This procrastination and this perfectionism. Well, feeling negative emotions makes it difficult for me to be present when executing the task, because you're constantly trying to run away. When you feel negative emotions, you try to run away from those negative emotions. You are in a different space. You're in a different headspace. You can only really be in a great state, in a flow state, really enjoying it, feeling positive, when you feel those positive emotions, when you aren't criticizing yourself for them. So that's the real issue with perfectionism. Perfectionism is coming from a deeper place of criticism and self-hatred. And so if you hadn't realized that before, starting to map this out point by point can really help you pinpoint what is happening in your life with this issue. Let's look at the next thing. Because I criticize myself, I feel negative emotions when working on the task, which means I may try to complete the task very quickly to avoid the negative emotions, which isn't sustainable. So you rush. How often have you done a presentation or speech or something like that, and you rush through it, right? You're afraid of public perception. You're afraid what will people think, because your standard is high. Your standard might be too high. This makes me agitated and rushed when working, which further makes me want to avoid the task. This could lead to burnout or procrastination. So you try to do it really quickly, and then, you might just procrastinate because you don't feel good. Once again, leading back into that criticism. And you can start to see that this is almost cyclic and symbiotic. These points feed off on each other. So when you're mapping it out, you can start to see how the relationship between these are. And as you go, if you notice things, you might want to put an arrow. So you try to complete tasks very quickly, and that makes you feel negative emotions, which means what do? You criticize yourself more, right? You can start to see how this is building up cycles. And everywhere, in this graph, we actually can start to see cycles being built up. So next one, I procrastinate on the task. Feeling negative emotions makes it difficult for me to be present when executing the task, which takes away from flow. It's hard to be mindful when you're feeling bad. That is so true. This leads to the task taking a long time to complete. Let's fix this up. It takes a long time to complete because you've got high standards and you're not in a flow state, because you procrastinate, because you may feel agitated. Now, this may result in you forming an identity of someone that takes a long time to complete tasks. Because what happens? You do something again and again and again in your life, and now there is some buildup of an identity, some identification, because you notice the pattern repeat itself, and you start to think, oh, I am that way. I am somebody that, is perfectionistic. I get annoyed, I get irritated when I can't get every detail perfect. You start to form this identity. You might even tell people in interviews, oh, my greatest weakness is I'm a perfectionist. I take so much pride in my work. Like that's a good thing. You might even see it as a good thing. But what's the real symptom of this? Because you at every step of this process, as you map this out for yourself, and I expect if you have this problem, map it out for yourself, because everyone is slightly different and slightly more individual here. And so what we have here is a bit more generic, but it should help you really guide you into mapping this out for yourself. So you form this identity of somebody that takes a long time to complete tasks. And why does this happen? Well, you mentally negotiate this flaw that you are somebody that takes a long time, that you may be agitated, maybe annoyed. You negotiate this flaw by saying that I'm doing it the right way, that I can't be rushed, that I'm special in some way, that my process is special, that I am some particular way for a good reason. This is more of the ego inflating self-worth in order to feel better about yourself and to continue to perpetuate the pattern of perfectionism. So you can start to see this is this cyclic process, this symbiotic process. It's self-referential, it's self-feeding, feeding that ego. And so what you're trying to do here is build more and more awareness and clarity in all the different parts that cause this subconscious restrictive pattern. Now, this means that I avoid circumstances that I think I might fail at or not meet the standard I've created for myself. And I do that because I am afraid of messing up. Now you can start to see this fear element. I'm afraid of messing up. And this will lead back to this. I set extremely high standards for myself to make myself feel special, or to avoid circumstances that I might fail at. And this all leads all the way back to the start of setting high standards for yourself. Perfectionism. So I hope you can see how powerful this process is. When you're doing this yourself, really dive into it, really dive into the individual aspects that are relevant for you, the things you've noticed. Map this out. Get a piece of paper or get a drawing tool. You can even use Obsidian like I have here and write this out. And mapping out this pattern gives you more awareness, which helps you break it, which is why we're doing it here today. This helps you get more clarity and see the real reasons, which ties into radical honesty, being honest with yourself, not hiding from yourself and the reasons you may be acting and behaving in certain ways, which is totally okay. Because remember that you are not this pattern. This is just a pattern that has been planted in you, maybe from society, conditioning, childhood, parents. But now it's time for you to take responsibility for this pattern. And by taking responsibility, you aren't being a victim. You aren't being a victim of your circumstances. You're realizing, okay, this may have been an issue in the past. This may have been planted in me, but I can choose what I'm going to do from here on out. I am the gardener of my life. I can remove the seed if it's a bad seed, and I can plant a new one where that tree should grow. And finally, look at what you are getting from each pattern. In each pattern, you are getting something, right? We're getting something. You might think, oh, what am I getting here? No, you are getting something. You're getting a sense of needing to control the situation because you're afraid of potentially bad outcomes. You want to control everything. Your ego is getting this self-worth, this feeling of self-worth. So you are getting something from your ego, this feeling of, oh, I'm somebody. And that might feel a little bit good. It might feel good because you're addicted to those chemical emotions, which stop you from, hiding from other things, stop you from looking at other things, I mean. So really, these are all these trade-offs that your brain is making. Your ego is trying to preserve itself in the way that it can. So you're getting something from the perspective of your ego. It's doing what it's doing best to protect itself in the best way it can. So actually, there's an aspect of it which is good for that ego. It once served you, right? It once served you when maybe you were really criticized by somebody else. Maybe you were criticized by somebody else when you were younger. And if you were, add this to the graph. Say, okay, there was another reason. Say maybe like I was criticized when I was younger at XYZ, if you can remember, or just say generic, and then add that to the graph. So you want to do things like that. Because maybe you were criticized when you were younger, and that is something you've learned to do. Because you didn't want to mess up in the face of somebody like a parent or teacher, somebody you wanted approval from at a young age. And so you wanted approval. And so that's something you want. That's something your ego is doing to protect itself. Because back when you maybe were a child, if you didn't meet those high standards, you were criticized, and so you were hurt, you were made to feel negative emotions. And so you develop this pattern of setting high standards in order to not get hurt. And so I hope you can really understand this aspect of the ego and how it has helped you. Don't see it as an enemy, see it as somebody that, or something that has helped you and served you, but now you are in a different space. Now you are older. And so you can let go of what's not serving you. You can say, thank you. Now I have more awareness on this. Now I can act in more empowered ways. Now I can act in better ways, greater ways that are serving me in ways that uplift my life more. And so when you are replacing this pattern, which I'll probably do another video on, maybe this pattern, maybe another pattern, but the process of mapping out a replacement pattern is about looking at the empowered ways of doing it, about breaking the chain, breaking all the links between each of these, asking yourself, what can break the links between these, and moving into an empowered space. I hope you learned something. And if you like this format of videos, you're welcome to leave me a message, subscribe, or just like the video. Because I always love feedback. I love comments. I love learning more about you guys, what you want, what difficulties you're facing in your life, or what things you've really learned that you'd like to share to me or other people. Thank you.